Hey there! Today we're going to go ahead and talk about a very important subject that could have a profound impact in your lives. For those that are joining me for the first time, my name is Jaime.Sandoval. I'm an educator. I've been an educator for 14 years. And one thing that I want to make very clear is that this is independent from my teaching role as a teacher. Now, one thing that I come to discover is that in our educational system, I'm grateful for everything. But one thing that I like to do is I like to look at quotes and explore them, me being a math teacher, using Venn diagrams and also the 5 elements of circumstance. And the first quote, the quote I want to explore with you today is one that Winston Churchill said about change. He said, "To improve is to change, and to be perfect is to change often." Now, one thing that Winston Churchill did is that he found out this very important and powerful quote, and he applied it in his life. Now, let's go ahead and begin first with who. Who does this quote apply to? Now, when we think about this quote, we go ahead and find out that it applies to many people. And we often said, if that person only thought differently, if they only changed their thinking, how much more of an improvement could they have? And in many situations, this quote is right. I tell my students and everybody that I know that I talk to that if they do not change, they hold on to their problems because they refuse to change. And the only way they're ever going to solve their problems is actually through change. So when you refuse to change, you continue having the same situation and you only continue to hold on to problems. The only way we're ever going to solve the problems in our world is actually through change. That's the only way we're going to be able to discover the solutions needed to create the solutions for those problems. Now, what needs to change in our lives in order to improve? Now, this question has many layers because our lives can be improved in many different ways. I tell my students that there is nothing that is being done now that cannot be done better in the future. We all have the benefit of using our creative power to improve our lives. And you'll see ideas and things all the way around you that what people did in order to make something better. Before Facebook, there was something else. And they went ahead and found out that when Facebook came out, people went ahead and started using Facebook. Same thing with Google. Before Google, there was all these search engines. So they found out that Google had a really nice algorithm to go ahead and give you really good search results. Now, I also want you to think about all the problems there are in the world. There's an incredible amount of opportunities to create change for the good. And it can be up to us to decide what is it that we want to do. Now, where can you change to improve? I think since anyone can improve their situation, I like to break it up into 3 main categories. You could go ahead and change your physical world. That means you could change your home, your car, your bike, things that you own. You could change yourself. That means that you either could change something that you have mentally, your knowledge, how much you learn, how many things you actually have mapped out in your brain, your database of knowledge, or you could go ahead and change your body. Or you could also change your social relationships that you have. That means that your family, people that you interact with. And I think part of the difficulty that sometimes comes when you do want to institute change is that your brain is kind of set already as far as what it does. And it's hard especially for people that are over the age of 25 to change because they're kind of like cemented in some cases, but yet they still have the power to change. So I tell my students all the time that they should embrace change. I let them know that they should always be grateful for the opportunity to grow. This gives them the power to solve their problems and face other problems that might come up because they know that through change to be able to solve them. Now, remember, it takes courage to change because we know that at times you may fail. So you always got to keep it in your forefront to actually always institute change to solve your problems. Now, when do you change to improve? And when are you changing to be perfect? Now, one thing that I come to discover is most people, they institute change only when New Year's comes around and they make their New Year's resolution and they say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and get in better shape, lose weight, join this, learn about this, create these things. And or the other time that sometimes when they decide to make some kind of change is when something happens in their lives. They show up to the doctor and it's like health related, and the doctor says, hey, listen, if you don't start exercising or start doing something, you're going to have a high blood pressure, which may lead to like a heart attack or stroke. And that's when people start changing in their physical realm because they've been scared. Now, I tell my students that the best time to create change is now, because unfortunately, with or without your permission, change is happening everywhere. And one of the things that we need to happen is to continue always looking for change, for the abundant opportunities that it brings us. Now, one of the things that you need to do though, when you think about change, is that you need to think about three things: direction, path, and outcome. You need to find out what direction am I going to take, how am I going to get there, and the outcome I'm going to have afterwards. And then this creates a positive change exactly the way you're looking at it. Now, why do you want to change to improve? And why do you want to change often to be perfect? Now, I would say that having something better today than what you have yesterday is something everybody wants and welcomes. We all have the opportunity to make something better than it was before, or we also have the option of not doing anything, and quite often things deteriorate. I tell my students that a lot of times improving can be of different forms. Now, you got to realize that when you improve, improvements in our world sometimes have been through breakthroughs, because before that, it was of no use. Now, what am I talking specifically? Like the COVID vaccine and vaccines in general, that was a breakthrough. The first successful space launch, that was a breakthrough. Electricity, breakthrough. Printing press, breakthrough. Penicillins, these were all like antibiotics. Those were all famous breakthroughs, and they came and led to a better world. Now, at times, it doesn't have to be something as large as that. Most of the time, most of your improvements are going to be refinements. That means that you start refining yourself and you start making a choice. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and ignore gossip. And instead, you start building an attitude of gratitude. So you make a refinement in your thinking. Now, sometimes it could be something around you where you live at. You know, you decide that, you know what, I want to upgrade my kitchen. Change my kitchen so it can look nicer. Maybe have more cabinet space, nicer countertops. So you create changes that have to do with you and where you live at. Sometimes it could be just your physical body. Sometimes you have to recover from an accident. So you start creating change in order to become better and try to overcome that accident. And it could be sometimes changing your eating habits, things that just create a positive effect for you. Now, how do we change to improve? And how do we change often to be perfect? Now, one thing that I do love is that I love the way Winston Churchill put the order in it. Because I think if you ask anybody, hey, listen, would you like to improve? Or they would say yes. They will tell you, yeah, I would love improvement. Now, but if you ask them, would you change? That's when they say, whoa, hold on a second. They're not always in agreement with change. And you start thinking about, if change equals improvement, why is it that sometimes people want to not change? And it has to do with something very simple. That it has to do with the fact that with or without your knowledge, things are changing all around you. And when you decide not to make change the way you want it, quite often, you're not creating improvement, you do the opposite of improvement, which is you deteriorate. So at times, you find out that you deteriorate when you don't create any change. Let me give you an example. Suppose that you stop exercising. What's going to happen to your muscles? They're going to deteriorate. Same thing with your heart, start deteriorating. What happens when you stop learning? You know, once you stop going to school, your knowledge, your database, everything you have starts deteriorating. What happens with your relationships? Let's say a loved one, a neighbor, somebody you used to speak to a lot, but then you made a change and stopped speaking to that person. Guess what happens to that relationship? It starts deteriorating. It could be a spouse, wife, somebody, husband, father. Once you stop actually creating change, like setting up goals with that person, then you actually start deteriorating. And it could be anything else. It could be something you create. You make a blog, a website, you do something. The minute you stop updating that, it starts deteriorating. You start writing down news on a piece of paper. What happens to that news the minute you start writing it? It starts deteriorating. So what ends up happening is that we need to set up goals. It becomes important because when you don't, and this also relates even to your money. The minute you take your money and just put it in the bank and just let it sit there or sit underneath let's say your mattress, that money starts deteriorating because you're able to buy less tomorrow than you did today. So it's very important that we go ahead and set up all kinds of goals. Goals and related to, and do what Winston Churchill said, create change. And create change in all these important areas that I talked to you about. Because see, the thing is that we're limited with time. You only have 24 hours in the day. So in these 24 hours, you need to start prioritizing, where do I place these different change? Where do I set my goals? You need to always set family goals, work goals, money goals, physical body goals, eating goals, but you need to create and make purposeful change for yourself, because it's only through there that you're going to go ahead and become perfect each and every time and improve as an individual. Now, it's a sad reality knowing that if you don't make change, you deteriorate. That's why it's so important that in every aspect in your life, create change so you don't get that, so you don't deteriorate. Change for the better, and you will see that it will impact your life. You will love things a lot better. Everything will seem great and wonderful to you. Now, a lot of people have always asked me how they could go ahead and support me. Go ahead and put a like to this video. Share this video with others. That's the greatest support I could have. And as always, thank you for watching. Bye.